Hi, everyone, and welcome back to our homeroom. I hope for you, you've been having an all right winter, been getting through February. For me, this is always one of my challenging months. I've talked about that in the past, that this month is challenging for me, but also I noticed it in the classroom a lot. There was a lot of misbehavior around February, which to me, it usually meant we needed to have and hold, force a little bit more boundaries. And I think that honestly stems from this natural inclination we have this time of year to just want to retreat and reflect and sleep and hibernate, right? We kind of want to pull in for winter. We don't really want to be out there being as productive as normal. And that's a natural part of our cycle. That is a natural part of nature. Unfortunately, society is not following those cycles of nature, so we are still expected in winter to be just as productive as our highest productive months, which is probably more of a spring, summer, right? Energy. But we don't want to be. So I think because of that disconnect between what our bodies naturally want to be and what society and productivity is expecting of us, things can get a little funny, and this month can be a little challenging for those people. So we see it in ourselves and we see it in our children, which again just means we need to have maybe a little bit more boundaries, which is why I've been talking about that so much these last few weeks. This is a great time to step into enforcing more boundaries. However, also, this means our children may need a few more boundaries. They are also expected to go into school and be as productive as they are every other time of the year, and they don't want to be. So they may need a little bit more space and freedom too. So we're going to get into that today about how it's important that our children have their own boundaries too. So remember, boundaries are a way for us as parents to provide safety and order, right? So health and safety and order of the home and of each other, while also respecting the rights and freedoms of everyone else, right? So boundaries are reciprocated. Boundaries are, here are the things that I need for my things and my space and my time. And then I'm also going to give you the freedom to have your own space and your own time to explore and discover and figure out who you are. So our children also need that freedom. They need to explore as much as possible. That's not a health and safety reason, right? So I like to think of it, I think my mom actually provided this analogy to me, probably right when I was getting ready to have kids. We were talking about it and how boundaries are important because it's almost like pretend there was a playground on the top of a skyscraper and you wanted to bring children up on top to play. We would have to have guardrails. There would have to be some limits and boundaries as to where you were safe to roam and explore. So if we took them up and there were no guardrails, there were no boundaries, it was just wide open, most of the children would stand still and be very nervous. They would not feel safe on that rooftop because they wouldn't know where the boundaries were. They'd be scared that they'd overstep it because if they overstep it, they could fall, right? So they'd want those boundaries. If we put up those guardrails, then they're free to explore. They're feel free to relax. They're not anxious. They're not nervous, not knowing where the boundaries are and what might happen if they step over those boundaries. Now they know they're safe. They're safe in those boundaries and they can explore and play. So then as adults, we provide those structures. That is what that health and safety and order requires of that space. Then we let them play. We let them explore. We're not standing over them. We're not micromanaging them. We're not keeping them in a tiny box in the corner and saying they can only play there, even though there's all this other space that also they're safe in, right? So we want to make sure that it is a reciprocal situation where we are providing that safety and order so that they can trust, they can allow themselves to feel safe, they can allow themselves to discover and play, but we are also giving them enough freedom to explore and space on their own. We're standing back, we're letting them play. We're not getting involved in their play. We're not telling them how to play. We're not telling them what area they can only play with or who they can only play with, right? We're letting them figure that out because they can figure that out on their own. So boundaries it's a good balance. We want to provide safety, health, order, structure and limit within the family. You also have your own personal boundaries that are important to be upheld, right? But if it's outside of that balance, if it's not a health or safety issue, it's not breaking a very important family routine, it's not overstepping your own personal need for space and boundary, then let them go, right? Let them go and explore. They're going to mess up. They're going to fall down. But when they do fall down out there on that rooftop while they're exploring, they're going to fall down. They're going to hurt themselves. They're going to get maybe even wrapped up with another child that wasn't very great. But then when they feel unsafe and they feel like something bad happened, they're going to come back to you. You're going to give them a hug and you're going to say, you got this. I'm here for you. Let me, mend your wounds. And then they're going to go back out there again. They're going to go back out and explore. Giving them that safety to know when they fall down, they can come back, they get a hug, they're all right, go back out again. They need space and independence to figure out who they are. And it can be uncomfortable for us as parents. In fact, it is going to be uncomfortable for us as parents, right? Seeing our children fail, seeing them make mistakes, that is uncomfortable, but we cannot grow. No one can grow without having some mistakes and errors to figure it out and get back up on our feet again. Babies cannot learn how to walk without falling on their bottom a few times first. It is okay if it is not a health and safety reason, it's not overstepping your own boundaries, and it's not breaking some structure or order that is necessary for the home. Let them go on their own. But because this can be challenging, and I understand it, I've been there a million times, I am here today to help you understand then how do we do that? Again, we're going to go into details about why providing them those boundaries is so important, but I'm going to give you specific strategies today to how to provide more independence and space so that they can go do that, but it's not so uncomfortable for you, because I know that's a little bit tricky. So just a reminder, if you haven't already, please make sure to check out the worksheet below. There's a reference sheet that can help you follow along visually if that helps you. Also, if you're not on YouTube already, I am on YouTube and I have slides there that you can follow along. And sometimes I know that helps reinforce the information a little bit. So, all right, let's go ahead and get into Your Kids Have Boundaries Too. Reciprocating boundaries with our children, yes, that totally benefits them, but it also benefits us in many ways. So why? Why is it so important that our children have and hold their own boundaries? It's going to make their lives better, and I promise you, it actually makes your life better too. Why? So there are two major reasons why. One is that it teaches them how to have healthy limits as adults. They need to also know what that feels like to have their own boundaries and to have their own space and independence so that when they grow up, they're able to do that in a relationship with an adult. Because boundaries in all relationships, in all healthy relationships, it is important to respect others' boundaries and then to have and hold our own boundaries. So it's a great model for them for when they grow up. The second reason it is super important, and this is how it helps you, is it diminishes misbehavior because it is a need. We all have a need for independence, control, feeling capable, having power, having all of those things. That is a need that we all have. And as I've said a million times before, if our needs are not met, we are more prone to behaving badly, more prone to that misbehavior. So the more you can give them that independence and control as much as possible, you will see less misbehavior from your kids. So that makes life a lot easier for you. So let's go into the details about those a little bit. So why is this healthy for them to have these boundaries? As they grow up, it's going to be important to understand that they're going to get in a multitude of different relationships. They're going to have romantic relationships. They're going to have friendship relationships. They're going to have employer relationships, colleague relationships, right? And you're going to want your children to grow up and know how to say no to others that are intruding on their own space. But if they don't know what their own boundaries are, it's going to make it really, really hard for them to enforce them. Also, if they've tried to enforce boundaries or they felt intruded on and were never allowed their own boundaries, they don't even know how to ask for them. So they will be prone to things like abuse, manipulation, or someone else controlling them. So, it is always important that all of us have authority over ourselves and our things. When someone repeatedly oversteps that, it teaches them that other people's needs are more important than their own, and we do not want them going into adult relationships with that understanding. We want our children to feel safe in relationships, to feel that they're allowed to ask for their own needs to be met. And that's in all relationships. We do not want someone taking advantage of our children. It puts them in more of a victim mindset. So it is really healthy that we allow our children some way to find their own space and independence and control, so that when they grow up, they know what that feels like and they can ask for that in other relationships. The second reason why it is so beneficial that they have their own boundaries is because you will see less misbehavior. All children, all of us humans, have a need for our own boundaries because it provides us with things like independence, a feeling of capability, a sense of control and personal power over our lives. That is important. None of us like to be controlled by other people, right? We want to feel that we have some control. Obviously, there's rules and limits that need to be followed, but we also want to feel like we have some control in that. So when someone oversteps boundaries repeatedly, it's going to feel like someone is having power over us or over controlling us, manipulating us, micromanaging us, right? So that feels bad. It feels intrusive, but it also can come across as disrespect. This person is not respecting my space or my own boundaries and rules and things that are important for me. So a healthy response from children when this happens is going to be one, either a pushback, actively or passively, or a hurt back. If they're feeling disrespected and they're feeling hurt by the fact that you continually overstep their boundaries, then they're going to want to hurt back. And that can look like things like fighting, defying, rebelling, resisting, retaliating, or getting revenge. So if you're seeing those behaviors, that is a sign, oh, my child is missing some need for space, control, or independence. So then it is your job as that parent to look and see, where are some places that I can give my child more space, more independence, so that they are feeling that need met and they're feeling less a reason to resist and defy and fight back. Now, also keeping in mind, every child is different and every child has different boundaries. So that's why you might have one child who is fine with you taking over the control of school. They're fine with you telling them what grades to get and how to get those grades and what classes to take. That might be all right with them because that's not something that matters to them. You may have another child that absolutely does not want you involved in their schooling and will fight back at every step of the way. So every child is different. And my child specifically was a very strong-willed boy, and I learned very early on that if I did not respect his space and his time and his things, that we would get in a fight. And the fighting wasn't worth it. Not for something that was not important, not for something that was not a health and safety reason, or it wasn't intruding on my space at all. That's fine, right? As long as I have my own boundaries protected, he could really pretty much have power and space and control over his things. So I learned really early on for my child what kind of boundaries and space, how we to reciprocate those boundaries in a way that worked for both of us. But if you have multiple children, they're all going to be a little bit different. And that's why you're going to see different misbehavior from different children, depending on how their boundaries are being held and respected. So just keep that in mind. So then, how do we best make sure we're providing, this space for our children? How do we make sure without also driving ourselves crazy? And that's what we're going to get into next. So I'm going to go over, boundaries as a whole, like what's important for them to have boundaries around. But then also I'm sharing my 3 best strategies for how to do that in a way that is comfortable for you and you're not completely letting go of control. Because I know, we also worry about our kids. We don't want them messing up and making mistakes and falling and hurting. And even though it's important and we know it's all important, it's really sometimes hard to watch. So I'm going to give you a few tips on how to do that so that you also feel good giving your children the space that they need to have those boundaries. So, giving our children effective space and control and how to make sure I use those boundaries effectively really comes down to that great definition I use all the time for what boundaries are. Boundaries are simply having a balance. You want a balance of maintaining safety and order in the home while also respecting everyone's rights and freedoms. So, let's talk about areas where you can give them space. So, everyone, when it comes to having boundaries, right, should have and enforce boundaries for their things. Things like their objects that they own, right? Their space, their room, things that are their own space. Their time. Their time is also theirs, and how they spend that time is important to them. Their body. And then also something I'm calling self-respect. And by that, I just mean we all know how we want to be treated by others. And if we have our own self-respect, I do not want someone else disrespecting me. So I'm going to have boundaries over how I am treated others, how others respect me, the respect that I'm getting. So my own self-respect, I'm also going to be providing a boundary around that. So for you as a parent, some things that you may have some space and independence and boundaries around are things that are in the household items or your items. Actual things in the home, you don't want them broken. You don't want them messed up and abused. You've spent money on those things. You want to make sure that those are treated correctly. So you may have some limits or boundaries around particular household items or your personal items. Your spaces, right? You may have boundaries around the way your nightstand is set up, or the way your bathroom is, or your bedroom. So things that are your space, your car, you may have certain limits and boundaries on your spaces. You might not want people bringing in sticky red drinks in your car because that can provide a mess and you don't want a mess in your car. That is your space and it is yours to be able to have boundaries around. Because you are running the household as the leader of the home, you are also going to have some boundaries around beneficial routines. So things that you know are really healthy for everyone in the home, things that keep the house running safe. You know, it's got to stay clean. We have to make sure we're maintaining the home. We also have to make sure we're maintaining everyone in the home's health, right? So brushing teeth at night, you know, eating healthy food, you know, things like that. So having beneficial routines around the home is also something you are going to have boundaries around. Your own schedule. You are not at the beck and call of your children. You have also a right to have some boundaries around your time, your schedule for the day. So you're allowed to say no sometimes about certain things. No, I can't take you to school at this time. We have to go early because I have a schedule I have to keep. So you are allowed to have boundaries around your schedule. Your sleep, you may have boundaries around that. That's also important. And mutual respect. The way someone else treats you is also going to be important for you. Again, you have your own self-respect and you expect everyone to be able to treat you with that respect as well. And if they don't, then you are going to exit the conversation until we can have a respectful conversation. So the way your children talk to you is also, you're able to have a boundary around that as well. So those things are all important ways for you to maintain some boundaries in the home. What about your child? What are some things that might they be able to have some boundaries around? So one is their items. Yes, technically, did you buy their items for them? Of course. You know, they aren't out there earning any money. So you may have bought their toys for them. You may have even bought them a cell phone, but that's still their item. And they may deserve to have some boundaries around that. Again, health and safety. That cell phone, I know it brings up so many safety issues, and that's okay. Those are actual boundaries, and your children will understand that. Your children will understand the boundaries around health when it comes and safety when it comes to having that cell phone, right? So that's okay. But when it comes to like just picking up their phone when they're sitting right there and going through their things, that might be an overstepping of their boundary. If you want to justify it and say, but I bought the phone, I should be able to take it when I want, you can do that, but it is going to feel to them like an overstepped boundary. So you are still going to see some of the negative feelings. It's going to feel disrespectful to them. It's going to feel, controlling or micromanaging to them. So then you may see some misbehaviors from that. But talking to your child about health and safety, not allowing them certain apps or certain things on their phones because of health and safety concerns, you're able to have that conversation with your child and they'll understand that. So their items. Another big one is their room. I gave up controlling my child's bedroom. If he was going to have it messy, he was going to have it messy. I tried, I taught him, I worked through so many times trying to get it. Finally, it was just a fight all the time. And I just gave up. And I'm like, you know what? You're old enough now. I've taught you how to clean it. I've shown you how to keep it orderly, and you don't prefer it that way. I don't know why, but I don't want to keep fighting with you about it. So you know what? Your bedroom is now your space. You keep it how you want. The only big rule we have is no food in the bedroom because, or, don't keep garbage in the bedroom or anything like that. We want to make sure that is out because we don't want bugs. But giving your child some autonomy and space and control over how they decorate their room, how they set up their room. Maybe they want to rearrange it in a way that you think doesn't make sense. That's okay. Give them a chance to figure that out. So anytime you can give them some autonomy over their room, it really helps them feel a little bit of, again, control over their space with limits, of course, that go around health and safety. School is a big one. I'm a teacher, and I am telling you, as from the teacher's perspective, the more independence and space that you can give your child over school, the better it will be in the long run. You do not want to be micromanaging their school, stepping in and deciding all these things for their school, and then all of a sudden in high school, when you want to back off, they don't know how to do it because they've never had independence or space on their own at school. So I see that a lot in high school students where parents are saying they don't want to do that anymore, but their children don't know how to do it. So it's this weird transition between how do I back away and let them have control in school, but not so much that they fail other classes, because those classes in high school, are usually more important. So it's really important that, and early on, I mean, even in kindergarten, I gave my son, choice over when and where he did his homework. So it can start with little bitty things when they're young, but then every year kind of backing off as much as you can and giving them more space and more freedom when it comes to their schooling. That will help so much as well. That's a huge part of their day. And I am telling you right now, I have seen it a million times when I finally convince parents to let go and let their child have complete control over their work. And this is usually in middle and high school. By then, they are completely capable of doing it themselves. I have literally just recently actually had a client who is in 7th grade go from getting D's and C's and D's and F's and like maybe a couple of A's to almost all A's, 2 B's and 5 A's and he literally says, because my mom has finally let go and let school be mine. And he's like, now I actually want to do really well. So the more you can give them that, the more they're going to rise to that occasion. It'll feel like their own, and they want that control and they want that power. Again, not all kids. Some kids are fine with you stepping in, but those kids that are giving you power struggles about school, might be time to let go a little bit. Little kids love to have some control over their outfits that they wear to school. And I know they might be crazy and they might be embarrassing and they might be mismatched. Caring what other people think about our child's outfit at school is not a health and safety concern. So let them do it. Let them figure it out. Unless it's, again, you're really worried that they'll trip, maybe certain shoes they can't wear, they can't wear their little heels, their little princess heels because they have PE. But if there's some outfit they want to try out, give them a chance to do that and have some self-expression. Physical touching. I was just talking about that, making sure children have some autonomy over what kind of hugs and physical touches and from whom they want those touches. There's some people that they might not feel comfortable giving hugs to, and that's okay. That is their body. We want them to have that feeling of that they can feel free to say no when someone is touching us in a way we don't like, because when we grow up, we don't want abuse to kick in, right? We don't want them to get in a relationship where they can become abusive. So it is really important with physical touch that they have some boundaries there. And then again, mutual respect. They are also able to say, I don't really like this conversation. This is not the way I want to be treated or spoken to. And to walk away when it's getting really rude and disrespectful. So keeping that in mind, if we know we need to give our children some space and room and choice, how do we best do that? what are some simple strategies you can do to start giving your children more of those boundaries? So the first one is choices. Really, really early on, you can start with literally with toddlers, giving them limited choices. Would you like to eat your breakfast on this plate or this plate? So you can give them two choices, and then as they grow up, you can expand those choices a little bit more. If they are not, again, if it's not a health or safety issue, and it's not infringing on your or other people's boundaries, let them have that freedom, that self-expression, and that control. It's not going to hurt anything. It might be a little embarrassing. It might be a little uncomfortable for you, but your discomfort is not as important as their feeling power over and control over some area of their life. So you might have to be a little uncomfortable, but that's okay. If it's not a health or safety issue, let them try it. Give them choices, as many choices as possible in as many different areas as possible. The second thing is if you are seeing repeated power-seeking behavior in a specific area, that might be an area that they actually are trying to let you know they need more responsibility there. They want to take it over a little bit more. For example, and I use this example a lot, so forgive me if you've already heard me say it, but when my son was, I don't know, maybe 2, and we were 2.5, maybe, we were doing teeth brushing every night, and it got to a point where there was probably a week straight where every time it was time to brush teeth, he was fighting me, arguing. We were getting into a huge fight, wailing, so much drama over brushing the teeth. And then I remembered these strategies because I read a book using these strategies at the time. And I thought, I'm going to see what happens if I just let him brush his teeth. Why am I still doing it? He's probably old enough to do it himself. And again, I can scaffold that a little bit, right? I can kind of give steps towards him doing it on his own. So the first step might be, you know what? Why don't you go ahead and brush your teeth all on your own tonight? And then I'll just come in and I'll give it a good check through and then make sure they're all nice and clean. So show me how you can do it on your own. Oh my gosh, she was so excited. No more fights. So I might have spent another week or so doing the check-in. And then eventually I was like, you know what? You got this. You can do this on your own. So giving them more responsibility is going to help. And then giving them that responsibility in a gradual way is helpful for you. And then the last thing, really, really important, is to allow mistakes, failures, and imperfect actions as they learn to be more independent. It's really, really hard. To comfort yourself, you just may have to, like, for instance, when my son was still learning to tie his shoes, he was not getting it right. He was making mistakes. He was fumbling, but I knew he could figure it out on his own. I walked away. I went and, acted like I had something important to do and he had to figure it out on his own because I was really uncomfortable watching him struggle with tying his shoes. And I wanted so bad to step in and do it for him, but I knew that he could do it on his own, but I was uncomfortable. So I literally walked away. I went and would, do something in the bathroom or pretend I'm using the restroom or go and tell him I had to go change clothes, whatever it was. I would get away from him so he could do that struggle without me. So sometimes it's okay to just walk away when we're allowing those mistakes and failures. It is going to be uncomfortable for you. Just try to step away. If you know, again, it is not a health and safety issue, they're going to be fine. I wasn't worried about him tying his shoes, that he couldn't, there was no health and safety issue there. Gave him that control, stepped away, let him figure it out on his own, and he sure enough did. So it can be tricky to provide our children that space, let them have their own boundaries, but it is so, so important. You will build such a great, trusting, mutual, respectful relationship with them when they see that you trust them, that you respect them, you're giving them that freedom. They will thrive like you have not seen before. I have seen it happen so many times with my clients when their parents are able to pull back a little bit. Those kids just fill up and they're able to do so much more on their own and feel really proud of themselves. It makes them feel capable. It makes them trust themselves that they can figure life out on their own without you. It is so, so important. So I know it's really difficult, but you got this. You can figure it out too. Parenting is hard, but the benefits of this one completely outweigh us continuing to step in for them and limiting them in any way. Okay, let's get into homework for the week. Number one, is there a certain time your child shows power-seeking behavior? Can you allow them more independence, space, choice, or control over that area of their life? So just do some reflection. See if there's a certain space that you're seeing a lot of that fighting back or defying or active or passive power. And if you are, what is somewhere you can maybe start gradually releasing, giving them a little more space or control or choice over that area of their life? Again, where you're comfortable with, find something that's, again, just a little step towards that. It doesn't have to be completely hands off, but maybe just a step towards that in the right direction. And you'll start to see them rise up, and then you can back off a little more and then they'll rise, so it's just this nice balance. But if it's not, again, a health and safety issue, let them have some space there. All right. And number two, if you are nervous about giving more independence to your child, get curious with yourself about why. Is it because it's a legitimate health or safety reason? Is it because it's legitimately overstepping your or other people's boundaries? Or is it something you're just trying to control because it makes you uncomfortable in some way? Again, usually that is their mistakes, their failures, or their imperfect actions. See if you can find a baby step toward letting go in that area. So a lot of us, if we were raised with perfectionism tendencies and we find it really important to get good grades in school, and our children are not getting good grades in school, we could worry what other people think of us. We could worry what the school is thinking of us. So sometimes we have anxieties over things like that we are trying to control simply because we are uncomfortable with it, or it is our own weakness or insecurity. So we have to be careful that, again, if it boils down to not being a health and safety issue, it's probably a good chance that they need some rights and freedoms in that area. So you may need to find, okay, that's really hard for me to let go of what other people think of my child's grades. It's really hard for me to let go of school and let them have some failing grades. But where can you step back on that? Maybe at least just say, okay, I'm not going to check your grades every day. I'm going to pull back and only check at progress report time, which is the natural, normal time to do that because that's when grades get official. So trying to just find little ways that you can start backing off and trusting that your child will step up when they're given that power and control. You may not have seen that in the past. If you've been doing a lot of stepping in and controlling, then your child may not know how to step up. So that's why just doing a little baby step gives them a chance to, and tell them, I'm here for you if you need some help with school, but I don't want to keep doing it for you. So you're not, again, letting go and completely being neglectful, but you're also letting them know you trust them, they've got this figured out, and you're there if they need you, and giving them as much space as possible. So again, those baby steps can sometimes help us get used to them having their own space and control too. All right, that is it for this week. Thank you so much for tuning in. And just a reminder, this was part 3 of 3 episodes where I spoke about boundaries. The first 2 were about why you enforcing your own boundaries is beneficial, not just for you, but also your children, how it benefits them, but then also how to use consequences effectively. They're a great way, if used correctly, they're a great way to enforce your boundaries. So, and then this week, of course, was reciprocating boundaries. So if you didn't watch those first 2 and you want some more tips, please make sure to go back and listen to those. And please make sure you like and subscribe, share with as many parents as possible. I'd love this information to help anyone that you know that might need it, especially this time of year. I know February is a little bit sketchy. So good luck on the rest of your month, and I'll see you all in a couple weeks.